right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
To Your Eternity, Season 1, Episode 19.
All right, well...
Torama.
Yeah, the kids are
Kids
dying.
are dead. Yeah, right. A lot of them are dead. And
being made into zombies.
Tonari...
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
There was that awesome conversation, though, with Tonari and Fushi at the beginning of the episode. It was great. Good stuff.
Yeah.
But now...
Knockers are
next?
here in full force.
Knockers are here in full force. You still have to deal with Hayase. Yeah,
Might be best
how's that
to
going to
run.
go?
Yeah,
it might be best to just leave. Yeah.
Yep. This is
finally
kind of a fucked situation.
all of this time.
Yeah, seriously. But, okay, Tonari and Fushi, maybe they'll get out of this together. Could be okay.
Yep.
But yeah, let's see. So y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. Alright everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. Alright.
It's over.
It's over.
Well, the show isn't over. The arc is over.
The arc is over. And I like then that we get
goodness.
one more episode basically to give us a kind of a picture of what's going to come next.
That will be very helpful, because this would be a very bad taste to leave in the mouth for the
even though in some ways this episode was pretty good, I would say, all things considered. Like, it's more that it's just way better than all the really uncomfortably
specifically
not entertaining really as much beats of the previous episodes that were I wanted to like this arc and Tonari especially, and I did eventually like Tonari. Yeah. But it's just, there's so many little things that
too
pulled
little,
me out
too
of
late.
it.
Same.
But
it pulled me
now,
out of it to the point where the entire idea of immersion was like,
yeah,
I wasn't even thinking about that.
I wasn't even caring.
Like, it's just okay. What is going to be decided to be done, right?
Yep.
And the whole ending scene with Fushi and Hayase on the boat, that was great. I loved that. Yeah. It was hilarious, the fact that he's just like, no, just create another boat. Bye. You know, it's like, there you go, right? Because this is a medieval world. You can just leave somebody, right?
Well, not only that, he's learned. He doesn't have to be attached to people just because they express desire to be attached to him.
Right. Yeah.
The island's lesson was learned. He's like, no, fuck you. I hate you.
Right.
I'm not going to care at all about you if you die. I won't take your form if you die.
But the idea that that's what Hayase was after, not only to just, have a baby with him.
I think that was it, is that the sexual thing would have been to then bond them together so that no matter what, if she ever died, he could potentially take on her form.
You never forget your first time. Yeah, and you know what? That's a way to make Hayase feel like there was a reason for bringing her back. Of like to have someone who develops that obsession, not just in the sexual side, but to the point of wanting to be one of the people that he takes the form of. Cool,
right? She's the dark form of Tonari's point of making him into a godlike being. Yeah.
And then the idea that one of the knockers ends up taking her over at the end. Cool.
She kind of got her wish.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a way more twisted, painful version of it. And I kind of like that. That's the consequence of this, because the knocker has no reason to be here necessarily, other than chasing Fushi, right? But it's just the fact that if that knocker was actually that close, the being could have been like, knocker swimming 40 feet that way, It
could have been a while later.
It could have been a while later. That's true. That's true.
But yeah, there were some elements of this episode that I wasn't sure how to feel about them, because on the one hand, it kind of felt like wasting time at some parts, but that was probably because I wasn't attached to the events that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, focusing on the fact that the kids died. Okay. The fact that we're going to
matters to Tonari.
It matters to Tonari, right?
Yeah.
Her giving exposition about them after they died. It does kind of feel like retroactively trying to undo the fact that we didn't give a shit about them.
Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But okay, Tonari cares about it. The random dudes that come in and end up crying for the dead kids, it does feel kind of like we're going to have characters cry about these characters to brainwash you into crying.
No.
It's not going to work.
Sorry.
But I do like the idea kind of this happening, and it
and
causes
it changes the island's inhabitants.
Right, because it's something where they had to be united against this unstoppable force of zombies, right? So naturally, once that's gone, they are able to have this sort of breath of fresh air, new perspective on things, even though it does feel a bit hard to buy, given the fact that, you know, amidst all of the people that would have been getting killed all the time, kids totally would have been among them. But, you know,
yeah, I think it's more the idea that this gave them a wake up call in the same way that this arc was a wake up call to Fushi, in that you shouldn't just trust people in general. People are pretty awful when it comes down to it. A lot of the times, not everyone is awful, but Fushi had gotten lucky. Of the people that he had interacted with thus far, the worst one before this was Hayase. Hayase was actually not that bad.
All things considered.
No, the only thing that she was a keeper of tradition.
Right.
She wasn't the malevolent, really, at that in that first arc.
Yeah, she was the enforcer of something that was fucked up. But you know, a lot of people will be in that situation here, and they might still, you know, be trying to be a good person. They just have a, you know, screwed up worldview or whatever.
Right, and in this case, we had an environment that was so screwed up that finding a good person in there, like Tonari,
was basically impossible.
Was a diamond in the rough situation, and Tonari was the best we got to showcase that the environment was so harsh.
And even then, it's not really that she was a good person.
No, exactly.
It's that she was the person that you spent enough time with in order to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that does that does feel like it adds some thematic value retroactively, even though it doesn't make up for the fact that I despised Tonari through the 80% of the arc. But you know, okay, cool. We have that at the end. Sweet.
Yeah. And I think the reasons why, and this is a really tough thing to kind of communicate here, is Tonari was not as bad of a character as even like our own like personal dislike of her was. It was what she represented from the authorial perspective of
the author strong-arming our main character in particular directions and like taking away agency and stuff like that.
It's like a DM in D&D being very railroady because they have a favorite NPC that they're going to make you spend time with.
Well, or even just they're railroady, and this NPC is sort of like the one managing the railroading.
Right. So it's like the DM just became the main character for a little bit, and it's trying to get you in on their NPC's tragic backstory and all this, and you're like.
But even then, we know that it's not really about the NPC's tragic backstory because that was
meta.
It's meta, and it was an afterthought in comparison to all of the other things that Tonari was functionally doing in the arc.
Right. Yep.
So
now it's over. Hopefully, we can move on to an arc that's wonderful. Now the show's going to be over soon, so it's like. And you know, this is more going to be a transition episode, really.
Right. And while I will be curious to see what they do with this episode, because it does feel very open to possibility.
Yes.
I am not going to be wanting to see a season 2 if it does end up happening.
Yeah. I have lost a good amount of faith in this property, and I would probably just watch it off the channel. Just in general.
I don't think I'd even do that. Yeah.
I would have to hear like more glowing like reviews and stuff like that, and wait till it be finished, not to waste my time. But I mean, it is what it is. We are in a situation where a show had some really good arcs in the beginning, some really enjoyable arcs, and one arc that was kind of shitty at the end. And yet, I would say by and by, I'm actually really happy that I watched this show because it deals with a lot of things with regards to exploring humanity that aren't necessarily always done that well, but. I really liked the fact that this episode ended Tonari in a place where, yes, author, I hated it in the beginning, but now I miss it a little bit. No, I don't miss the island. I don't miss the island.
No, not at all.
I miss the idea of Tonari going to travel with Fushi. Right. But she made the tougher call here, which is I'm going to stay on this island, the place where my father became who he was, and she still doesn't know whether or not he was a murderer before this or what have you, but she's going to make this place better where she can, do something that will not just be a form of a redemptive thing for her, but for many others. And as far as a character to recur in the story later, Tonari had a lot of development. I didn't get attached to her as quickly as I would have liked to.
Right. My desire to have her be in the future, like, her not traveling with Fushi makes sense for plot reasons because the knockers are dangerous, right? She's a kid still, you know.
Right, but also she needs to make her own decisions.
Well, right. But even if she decided to travel with Fushi, like, there's reasons why that would be a problem.
Right.
Which, there was a part of me that was wanting her to travel with Fushi because it's if we're going to be forced to spend this much time with a character, and I'm finally getting to the point where I can stand them and then maybe
I see their
kind of
potential.
like them a little bit, then I kind of want them to
potential,
stick around. But that was a cool story decision to make, and given the fact that it's we could meet again, that's something where you can circumvent the whole problem of it doesn't make sense for someone to survive alongside Fushi when he's dealing with the knockers. Cool. Because even for someone who could breathe fire, right, that still didn't turn out very well.
No, it didn't.
But
no, it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think Fushi is going to the original spot that he was traveling to before?
Where was he even? Oh, yeah, the island with the animals or whatever.
Yeah, the island with the animals. Yeah, so we can get a bunch of new forms.
Sure. Yeah. And he'll probably see Pioran because she ended up getting off the island.
Yep.
So maybe the two of them will continue more. Maybe Pioran will be like, no, my time's done, you know?
Yeah, and maybe Fushi won't be so compelled to be like, no, I have to stay with you, you know?
Right, exactly. He'll be more comfortable being independent. That would be cool.
And then maybe this is a thing of where Fushi then actually, like, engages with the being and is like, how can I actually best do what you want me to do here? Because I don't know my purpose. I don't know who I am, really. And, you know, obviously it's not necessarily the best thing for me just to, you know, group up with other people.
Right.
And I'd like a quest focused on that. I'd like a quest where the companion, if you will, is the being.
Sure.
And they speak about the world. They talk about immortality. They talk about
that'd be
all this
good
stuff. There could be some really cool conversations where the inhumanity of this being and the humanity that's blossoming within Fushi could, you know, come to the foreground. Well, now, we obviously need a human character to provide that middle ground between the two eventually.
But
they don't need to
Fushi
happen
could be that character, kind of.
Well, he's almost there.
Right.
He's almost there, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why that idea sounds so interesting, you know, is not just because, to me at least, is not just because it's an entity that's been around for a long time, so getting focused would be nice, but because that's inherently character-driven, right? You know, as opposed to what a lot of this arc was, which is anything but.
Right, and Fushi choosing anything is basically amazing here.
Right, it's all an improvement because, you know, where it was.
Yeah.
But something that I want to state to make sure that it's made clear is that, like you said, you were happy that you still watched this show. An arc that is really terrible at the end does not necessarily mean that the rest of the show, you know, is taken down because of it, right? Yeah. Like, if anything, it might feel like March's death is cheapened a little bit, or, you know, because it's like, it might have been specifically trying to crank the tragedy wheel.
Because Hayase is still a bit of an interesting choice. Like, but it's something where, you know, those arcs that we got were still wonderful, you know, like, so that is for the most part unharmed by this, right? Right, because
even though this is the thing that's going to leave that bad taste in the mouth.
Yeah, because they're kind of what we expected this show to be as we went through them, and then the stuff with Gugu was incredible.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So if we go back to that formula, I'd be okay with it. The difference being that Fushi is a different person now.
Right, so it'll be its own new thing, which will be great.
Right, but he might be more guarded now. He might be a little bit less, you know, vulnerable in how he interacts with these people.
Well, and also it's one of those things where the more you have knockers doing stuff and the different kinds of stuff they do, the harder it gets to write around them, basically. Because, like, even in this situation, them doing a zombie apocalypse thing, that means there were a bunch of knockers here, because it was each one knocker per zombie, right?
Yeah.
We've only ever seen one at a time, and they were terrifying, but for this, they decided to do it like that, but that meant it was a coordinated effort. So, you know, it would make sense for it to be coordinated in the future. Now, the continuity of this show is all over the place, so it could totally just forget that happened, and that's fine, just like it forgot about the knockers that were underground when Fushi burned the bodies. You know, sure.
They were all conveniently exactly in the pit at that time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They weren't above ground. When Tonari and, you know, the other kid were getting away, they didn't get grabbed, you know, like little things like that. But
the point I think he was making was that they had to come from the zombies to then go underground and then go up there. It's like the tentacles were coming from their feet or something.
Right, but like,
Yeah,
but
it wasn't as well.
The
visually
knockers aren't
communicated.
dependent on needing to have zombies in order to get inside things. So yeah.
Yeah.
But because that kind of precedent has already been set, that means that the series doesn't have to be bound by some of the maybe less good decisions that it's made, because it hasn't been doing too much as far as continuity, anyways. So you can kind of just start with a blank slate if you need to.
Well, you literally are going to have Hayase as a knocker.
Right.
Like she's going to get taken over. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah. Right.
yeah, so Fushi, you might now have to actually fight eventually Hayase, whose motivation in her own self is to find you.
Right. But at the same time, if the knocker took her over, she will be dead. She will be fully dead.
Yeah. But I want to throw out the idea that knocker that she spoke with at that one time is the exact same one
I think so.
that picked her up again here.
Yeah, because otherwise, right. And if that's the case,
It might be she's not dead.
it might not kill her because
Yeah.
it wants her intelligence, and that could be a way to keep her interesting, because like one of the other reasons why the whole zombie apocalypse thing like just irked me a little bit, even though it's like, okay, it's not that big a deal, like considering everything else, is that if Fushi is trying to defeat the knockers, before he was just dealing with a knocker and it would be a problem. This was the knockers, so how will the knockers be a problem?
Right.
Well, okay, you have one with intelligence and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a way to keep it fresh.
Yeah, the way that they learn is the most terrifying thing.
Right. Yeah.
The way that they ambushed
Hell,
him perfectly with the Gugu situation shows that they're capable of that.
And given that we have a face for at least one of the knockers, that means we could even follow Hayase's perspective, especially if she's kept alive. And then we might be able to see the colony of knockers where they go to like give each other updates of, hey, this is what the deal is,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hayase's perspective having a communication of sorts through knockers. That could be really cool.
That's actually something I would be very excited about. Like, I'm not like the idea of her becoming like one of like the people to travel with Fushi, that did not excite me. But seeing her as a potential like villain protagonist of dealing with all the knockers and shit like that could be fun. I feel like that's where her brand of crazy could maybe do really well. You know?
I feel like the reason why I wanted her to join the party is because I wanted Fushi to basically have to wrestle with how to deal with her.
And then he did that.
He just decided in like 10
Kicks
seconds.
her boat away. Yeah.
I love the decision this even more than what I had come up with, but that was why I thought of it, because I'm like, well, actually, there's some ways in which Fushi could have learned the other lesson, which is you can manipulate people.
Sure.
And it's like, oh, fuck, Fushi ends up manipulating
That'd be crazy.
her to be like, well, I need you to do things for me then.
Sure. Ugh.
And it's like, I mean, that could happen where it's just like, yeah, he just keeps kind of baiting her with basically like I'll remember you.
Hell, that could be how he ends up like defeating the knockers too, is that if she's kept alive, then she could end up theoretically like in some climactic battle end up helping him. Yeah. And then we could also by proxy maybe get to know individual knockers, and then maybe this knocker ends up being like, you know what? The rest of y'all are crazy because it hasn't been working. I'm sticking with her.
Yeah, it uses Hayase's voice as a way to communicate directly.
Yep. Like,
and that could be a really cool world building thing, is that the knockers then maybe also communicate with Fushi as to what they even are, what they want.
Yeah.
In
getting
reality.
Individuality or things like that. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. But y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access. You can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.